Hello and welcome back to this installment review of Netflix Sandman. If you have missed any of the previous installments, I will have links down below at your convenience. With that said, and you have brewed a nice cup of chai, let us begin the review. Episode 4, A Hope in Hell. In this episode, the action bounces back from Morpheus going to hell to retrieve his helm, and John Dee attempting to retrieve the ruby. Instead of bouncing back as the episode does, I will just summarize each storyline fully on its own. We will begin with John Dee. As we last saw him, he escaped the prison, or hospital, and the Corinthian gave him his jacket. Crossing the street, a car stops suddenly to avoid hitting him. We meet race swap number 5, Rosemary, exiting her car scared and concerned for John's well-being. Rosemary, seeing John in his pajamas, asks him if he is lost. Let me stop it right here. In the source material, John Dee's appearance is ghastly, and he just escaped from Arkham Asylum. If you nearly struck this person on the street, and saw this person, with Arkham Asylum very close by, would you offer this person a lift? Obviously not. Being that the show's version of John Dee is normal looking, would you still offer a lift to a person wearing pajamas, next to a mental institution? I would think not. Yet, this race-swapped character is kind, and compassionate to the sorry-looking white male. Just for context, in the comic, John Dee asks Rosemary for a lift at gunpoint. That is quite a difference. Anyway, John hops into the back seat as his destination is on her way home, and she is more than happy to do him the favor. On their way, the two make small talk, and John eventually brings up her mother having to move them from place to place, and telling Rosemary her mother was a thief and not a good person. The small talk is light and cordial, and then John asks Rosemary if she lies to her 2 daughters. She reveals that her ex-husband was the liar in their family, hiding an affair, and a love child with another woman for 10 years. She states that lying is the worst thing another person can do to another. Let us stop here for a moment. Rosemary is a race-swapped character. Is her character's race important or relevant to the story? No. Does her character act the same as the source material? No. Thus, her character was race-swapped, not because she was the best person to play the role, but for some other reason. This dialogue about lying is not source material, and when she talks about lying, it is about her husband, and his infidelity. We do not know the race of her husband, but that is not as important as showing Rosemary being a girl boss for leaving her husband and raising her daughters on her own. Once again, the patriarchy is evil. Anyway, John then reveals his mother forgave him before she died, and Rosemary asks for what. John explains it was for stealing the ruby, and she had him thrown in jail for it, including arson, murder, and general mayhem. Rosemary asked if he murdered people, and John acknowledges it, and states they were bad people trying to take what was his, unlike herself. Knowing she is giving a murderer a lift, Rosemary is now concerned for her well-being. As John continues their small talk conversation, Rosemary attempts to call 911, but fails. They continue to talk about the subject of lying, and Rosemary says people lie in order to not get hurt. John tells her that she is a good person unlike others in the world, and thanks her. Rosemary sees her petrol meter is 3/4 full, and asks John if they can stop for petrol, and tells her he does not mind. She stops at the petrol station, and says she has to go inside to pay. She asks him if he wants anything, and says no, then steps out of the car, and accompanies her into the store stating he would like something. Inside, she lets him browse the shop while she whispers to the attendant to call 911. Reluctantly, he does, and John overhears him, and pulls out the amulet. John grabs Rosemary by the arm and insists they must leave, and the attendant pulls a gun on him telling him to let her go. John pleads with him not to shoot while he slowly steps towards him, and the attendant eventually shoots, killing himself. Rosemary and John leave, and Rosemary asks if he's going to kill her. He says not unless she gives him a reason to. The next scene, the two stories converge, so let me now recap Morpheus's segment. So Morpheus goes to hell. He and Matthew look out in a desolate wasteland and Matthew asks, where to? Morpheus says they should follow the damned. As they follow, they eventually get to a tunnel that ends in a gate. A demon meets them on the other side asking who he is. Morpheus states who he is, and asks for an audience with Lucifer. After some back and forth threats, the demon lets him in. Let me pause it here for a moment. In the comic, Morpheus beats up a demon for giving him attitude and disrespect, and Etrigan the demon is the one that leads him to Lucifer. Once again, due to DC copyrights, we do not get Etrigan, another seldom used character from the DC universe brought into the Sandman universe. Those are cool aspects much to the detriment of the show. Also, once again, We see the show intentionally dismiss Morpheus displaying alpha characteristics to continue and promote the false woke narrative. The demon leads them through an ashen forest, and Morpheus and Matthew exposits who Lucifer is, when the demon guide is lost. Matthew flies up to see if he can spot him, and we notice that the trees are tormented souls. Looking back down, Morpheus sees the demon standing right in front of him, and leads them again. Up a narrow and precarious path, they continue their journey with Matthew questioning if they are going the right way. Morpheus calls out to the demon, and asks him where he's leading them, when he hears a woman's voice call one of his many names. Morpheus looks, and sees an African lady imprisoned in an opening. He recognizes her, and as she looks at him, Morpheus appears as the African god Kaikul. He looks at her surprised, but greets her. She believes he has come to free her after all this time, but obviously not. He says he is no longer angry at her, but he still has not forgiven her, and leaves her. She calls out as Morpheus walks away, that she will not lose hope, and that she will never lose hope. Let me stop it here for a moment. It has been 10,000 years since Morpheus sent her to hell. Apparently, not once during those 10,000 years, and even now after seeing Morpheus, and seeing him leave her once again, she still carries hope in her heart, with Morpheus telling her just now that he still cannot forgive her after 10,000 years have passed. Such enduring optimism. For comparison, this optimism is not from the source material. Once again, even when wronged or unjustly punished by the evil white male patriarchy, the fortitude of a female person of color is unwavering even after 10,000 years. Given what is going on in today's current events, it is plain to see the show gaslighting us in the name of wokeness. Anyway, they continue following the demon, and Matthew and Morpheus exposit about Nada briefly, until they see Lucifer's castle yonder. The demon departs, and Morpheus and Matthew make the final trek. They enter Lucifer's castle, and are soon at Lucifer's parlor, and greeted by Brienne of Tarth. They greet each other, as well as Mazikeen. After some exchange of pleasantries, Morpheus states his business, and demands his helm back. Lucifer asks which demon has it, and Morpheus states he does not know, so Lucifer summons all the demons. Lucifer says they will have to call on each of them one at a time. Morpheus says that will not be necessary, and pours a heap of sand from his pouch, and the sand brings the demon to them. He asks the demon what its name is, and the demon balks. Lucifer states its name is Corazon, and Morpheus demands the return of his helm. The demon says no, as it obtained it fairly, and if he wants it back, he will have to fight for it. Morpheus agrees, stating if he wins, the helm will be returned to him, and Corazon states if it wins, Morpheus will serve it in hell for eternity. He accepts the terms, and Lucifer asks who he names as his champion. Morpheus states himself, and then asks Corazon, and it names Lucifer. Lucifer states he must represent Corazon, but Morpheus still has a chance to back out, but he does not change his mind, and accepts the terms as is. As the challenge is about to begin, Morpheus steps away to speak with Matthew, and orders him back to the dreaming to inform Lucian what is happening, and the possibility that he may not return. Matthew defiantly ignores his orders, and stays, and the two begin the battle of reality. The battle begins where one person chooses an entity where the other must choose something that can defeat or overcome it. When they choose their embodiments, the other is struck by it in accordance. The two fight, with Morpheus finally winning. Let me stop it here for a moment. Although the battle of reality is in the comic, the way it is portrayed is quite different. Being that this is a different medium, I have no issues with the change, but I do have issues with the representation of characters. First, Lucifer does not champion Corazon. This makes no sense, as Lucifer, being the Lord of Hell, is acting as judge of the battle. As hell may be a place of evil beings, it is lawful, and those laws are obeyed strictly. In the comic, the battle of reality is portrayed as a battle of words, with the two dueling like stand-up poets at a speakeasy. In the show, Morpheus and Lucifer are shown receiving and suffering the injuries and damage from their opponents' embodiments. I do not have an issue with this, but I do have an issue with the show intentionally not showing Morpheus strategizing his next move like a chess player. In the comic, he clearly sees the direction the battle is going, and he shows he is never truly in danger of being trapped. His choices are calculated, and the end result happens the way he intended it to, not by luck and not by a stupid and pointless pep talk by Matthew. Once again, the show intentionally omits Morpheus's intelligence and his calm and calculating demeanor. Also, we get another insolent display of defiance from Matthew. The show wants to force upon us how useless and dependent Morpheus is on his own, and he needs and relies on the assistance of his underlings, or else he would fail at everything. Once again, this is absolutely unacceptable. Anyway, Lucifer, angered, but reluctantly orders Corazon to return Morpheus's helm. He does not want to give it up. Then Mazikeen activates girl boss mode, and takes it from him forcefully, and tosses him off the balcony. Morpheus thanks them both, stating that Lucifer is just. Lucifer says why should they allow him to leave? He has no power in hell even with his helm. Morpheus tells Lucifer that what power would there be if all the souls were not able to dream of heaven? Lucifer grows even angrier, and threatens Morpheus that his day will come, but Morpheus replies in defiance, until that day, and leaves the way he came. Let me pause it here for a moment. As this dialogue is roughly accurate, the issue I have is the visualization. What have we seen of hell? The ashen forest. The narrow path up the hill. Lucifer's castle, and his view out of his balcony. As most of these visuals are green screens, and they have the source material as a blueprint, there is no sense of desolation, or despair, or dread, or mainly suffering from any of the visuals. There are no sounds of suffering in the background. There is no sense, or description of smell or temperature. There is nothing that makes us feel uncomfortable. Also, the final scene of Morpheus leaving hell is striking in the comic. He does not tell only Lucifer about the power of dreaming of heaven, but he tells it to all of the demons. This act undermines Lucifer's power, and he has no choice but to allow Morpheus to leave. Also, when Morpheus leaves, the demons part from him and the demons are afraid to look at him directly. The scene is extremely powerful, and shows just how badass Morpheus is. Yet we get not even a shred of this portrayal in the show. Never can Morpheus look strong. Never can he exude any alpha qualities on his own. The show's portrayal of Morpheus is nothing less than a travesty. Anyway, Morpheus ends up back in the spot he started from when he arrived in hell, and he dons his helm. He says he can see the ruby, and teleports to where it is. As he picks it up, he senses there is something wrong, and the ruby reverberates an energy wave knocking him out. John steps into the warehouse, and picks it up and leaves. He walks back to Rosemary, who is waiting patiently in the car.
But why?
Who knows? Anyway, she says she'll regret this, but asks John, the person that told her he was imprisoned for murder, and personally witnessed him kill a person in front of her eyes, if he needs a ride. Again.
Fucking hell.
John asks if she wants him to get back into the car, and not to lie. She says she just wants to go back home, and if she is going to kill her, she pleads at least spare her dog. John tells her she's a nice person, and gives her the protection amulet, and he no longer has any need for it now that he has the ruby in his possession. With the conversation over, John walks away. This concludes episode 4. Before I get into the overall episode review, let us discuss the scene that just ended. We have already discussed Rosemary being a race-swapped character. We discussed the reasons for the character being race-swapped, and determined the character's race and even gender is irrelevant. In the end, John, the white man, thanks Rosemary for being a good person, and gives her the protection amulet. In comparison to the source material, John kills Rosemary, being the psychopath that he is. That is quite a contrast to the end result for the same character. One is given thanks, and praised for being a good person, and given a powerful gift, while the real version is simply killed. Do you think changing Rosemary's character and her demise has anything to do with her being race-swapped? Of course. It is obvious to see the woke narrative being shoved in our faces without any shame or subtlety.
Fucking hell.
To review the episode as a whole, it is just as bad as the previous one, if not worse. Although the story touches upon the same beats from the comic, the story told is drastically different due to the characters. The nuances of hell, and the stoic and cunning demeanor of Morpheus is completely absent in the show. We are not introduced to the triumvirate of hell, and we do not meet Azazel or Beelzebub. Although I understand the difficulty in showing them on screen, the real reason for their omission is to give Brienne of Tarth more centralized power, and more screen time. When you look at John's story arc, it is just him and Rosemary talking in a car. John has no extensive makeup needed, which is a huge cost savings that could be used towards their special effects budget. Now I can see some of my critiques can be taken as nitpicks, and can be due to wanting the show to be more faithful to the source material. That is true. I do not mind the changes made in regards to the battle of reality, but my complaints resides with the characterization and role of Lucifer, and mostly of Morpheus throughout the show up to now. Lucifer champions Corazon is not only wrong, but it is also stupid. What does he gain if he wins? Nothing. Corazon wins. At most, Lucifer wins some reputation points. However, what would he lose if he loses? Respect. It would be a huge black mark on his reputation in front of all the demons of hell for eternity. Is that a risk worth taking? And of course, Morpheus. Losing the battle of reality, he requires the pep talk of his recently created raven, that was not even created by him. This is absolutely unacceptable. Simply put, this is not Sandman. This is work-infested trash dressed up to resemble the story. Let us begin wrapping up the review of this installment. Taking none of the source material, I would grade it a 4. As I stated earlier, the representation of hell is flat. There is no senses to experience other than what we see, which is lacking to begin with. Given the other story is just two people having a chat in a car, the showrunners should have given us a more visceral representation of hell. Given the source material, I give it a 1. Morpheus, Matthew, John D., Lucifer and Rosemary are all dreadful representations of the source material. As we are 4 episodes in, the benefit of the doubt is all but lost. The show is all in on the woke narrative, and I do not see it ending now. However, have we reached the lowest of the low? What would the showrunners say?
Nonsense. I've not yet begun to defile myself.
Fucking hell.
This concludes the review of episode 4. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in our next installment. In the meantime, have a nice day, and take care.